Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules, because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
To just come together and talk about, different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting.
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales podcast, y'all. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules, because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
To just come together and talk about, different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting.
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales podcast, y'all. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules, because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
To just come together and talk about, different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting.
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales podcast, y'all. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules, because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
To just come together and talk about, different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting.
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales podcast, y'all. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
To just come together and talk about, different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting,
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But, guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast Show. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
To just come together and talk about, different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting,
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But, guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast Show. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
To just come together and talk about, different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting,
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But, guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast Show. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
To just come together and talk about, different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting,
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But, guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast Show. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
To just come together and talk about, different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, Daquan, there's so much to talk about. so many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting.
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast Show. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules, because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So just come together and talk about different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting.
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast Show. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules, because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So just come together and talk about different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting.
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast Show. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules, because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So just come together and talk about different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting.
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Oh, they got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast Show. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules, because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So just come together and talk about different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Daquan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting.
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
They got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast Show. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules, because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So just come together and talk about, different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, Dequan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting,
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But, guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
They got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast Show. Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
Gentlemen, it's been so long since I've seen you both, and I just happy to see that we could finally find some time in our schedules, because we're all busy men, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So just come together and talk about, different stuff, man. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Oh, Dequan, there's so much to talk about. So many issues affecting men. I don't think we could get through it all in one sitting,
I totally understand.
Yeah. So much. But, guess what? We're here.
Pull your chairs, grab your drinks, and join in on the conversation.
Cocktales, where the conversations are refreshing.
They got a kid on another one. Yeah. If you're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast Show.
All right, everyone. Good night. We are here today. Welcome to Cocktales, the very first episode. Cocktales, just a little brief introduction. Cocktales is an initiative by the Gender Affairs Unit in collaboration with the National Chronic Disease Unit and PAVE. Firstly, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Malihana Hotel, Pink Mako, and Young Hustlers. Jeffrey?
Oh, yes, we are here at the illustrious Malihana Hotel, one of the premier boutique hotels here in Anguilla, and I think I'll go so far as to say the Caribbean. And I can tell you, we could not have picked a more gorgeous place to have a discussion here tonight. I am so happy to have everybody here. We are here where we're going to be enjoying the stunning views of Meads Bay and the amazing handcrafted cocktails of Bar Soleil, one of the most storied bars here in Anguilla. I'll tell you for certain, this bar has held many a great conversations, and I think it's going to have another one here tonight.
If the walls can talk.
If the walls could talk.
All right, that was one of our lovely hosts. Hi, good night. My name is Dequan Reed. I'm your host of the night. We're also accompanied with also my other hosts. We got Jibri Lewis, who we just heard on the mic, and the wonderful Mr. Andrew Niles is here with us. And we have right here on this side, we have our lovely guests. Firstly, I would like to welcome the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Robert Clark. Next, we would like to introduce Mr. Jadu Vanterpool right here in the middle. He is here in the capacity as an educator. We would also like to introduce Mr. Kassim Ford. He's here in the capacity as one of our spiritual leaders in the community. And nonetheless, Mr. Busy Man himself, saving lives every second. Every time he saves lives, he just looks at people and saves people. Mr. Sherlin Rich Shutson is here with us, and this is the first episode of Cocktail, and we would just like to thank the gentleman for coming out here to have our discussions. So, as the name implies, cocktails. Clearly, we got some lovely cocktails here. Jibri, let's see. We got Under the Cabana. We got Soterita and Watermelon Mule. Those are just some of the names of the lovely handcrafted cocktails here at Malihana. So, gentlemen, just join me and let's take a toast in the air for tonight's proceedings, and we just take a sip and get right into it. Cheers.
That's good. That's
Lovely.
Good. That's
Disclaimer alert: we do not condone alcoholism. All right, guys. So this is the beginning of the conversation. I hope everyone's ready. So we came up with this little icebreaker just to get everything going. So before we get into the main topic of the conversation, we're gonna get to that. But the icebreaker, in one word, we're gonna go down the line. What does it mean to be a man in 2023? So we're gonna start with Mr. Clark. What does it mean in one word to be a man in 2023? To you, yeah. Say that again.
Empathetic.
Empathetic, okay.
I like that.
Mr. Ford?
I like that.
Legacy.
Mr. Vanderpool?
I'd say motivated.
Motivation, okay.
Responsibility.
Responsibilities. Okay, so just down the line with the guests, we got empathy, we got...
Wait, but we ain't gonna go through us as well.
I think that question.
We gotta
we
get
got all
there,
of us.
guys. You gotta
And
get
guess
there.
what,
We gotta
Dickwan?
get there.
You need to give a one word as well too.
Yeah, of course. Of course, we are here.
We're gonna get to that. So we're gonna run it back. So Mr. Clark says what he feels is to be a man in 2023 is empathy. Mr. Ford he said legacy. Jadu said motivation and motivated, and Mr. Chutson said responsibility. So we're gonna go down to our host right now, guys. Give me one word. What do you think it means to be a man in 2023?
I could tell you in 2023 to be a man, it means pressure.
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 Pressure
And the
bus
doctor
fight.
knows about that pressure.
That's true.
I think in 2023 in Anguilla, you need to be, as a man, determined.
Determination. That's right. For me, to be a man, to be a human in general, integrity. That's something I live by. Integrity, definitely. All right, guys. So to get down deep into what we're here for, the general topic of tonight is gun violence and how it affects us as a community and a nation. So we're gonna start the questioning, no pressure whatsoever. So we're gonna start off with Jibri. Jibri, you can lead us in the first segment, and we go down as we know.
Yes. The topic gun violence. No, it's a hard one. It's a pressing one. It's a timely topic, and it's one that I feel like affects everybody, of course, in a great deal, but by and large, especially in terms of where you see perpetration, where you see victims, it comes a lot on the men, us men. The fact of the matter is, the majority of gun-related crime is men, and it's something that we don't typically get a chance to sit down and talk and discuss. I have some very interesting statistics that go back just for the last couple of years. For the last couple of years, year by year, we've seen an increase in fire-related matters, most notably possession of firearms. 2020, we had 10 violations. 2021, 15, 22, 16, and Jadu is a man of numbers. He can understand that number is going up over and over, and it's something that we need to. Statistics show. It's something that we need to address. Now, I always thought it was very interesting that despite the fact of possession numbers increasing, not necessarily has that related, or at least directly related, into things like discharging of firearms, for example, or specifically maybe gun-related murders, where that seems to relatively hold steady. But what it shows is that more and more people are acquiring firearms, not necessarily using them. It's a very interesting idea to look at. It seems like there is more and more of a demand or interest in persons in Anguilla in acquiring firearms. Now, a lot of people, you could be shocked to find out, there is a legal method of obtaining a firearm in Anguilla. And I don't know if I could just run it to the Commissioner Clark here and just give us a quick rundown of what the process looks like in obtaining something like a legal firearm.
Sure, absolutely. So the initial application from the applicant comes to me. It comes to me initially, the letter of application. The applicant will then go through a number of checks for suitability, such as previous interactions with the police, previous criminal history, any threats against the individual. And if it was granted, and this is not America, so there is no right to bear arms on the island. It's a privilege to hold a weapon because they are things of danger if you don't know what you're doing with them. And I've been around firearms for over 40 years, so I know if you're not experienced in them, and the doctor will know only too well the very horrible consequences if it goes horribly wrong.
Absolutely.
If you're successful, then we will have some other criteria in that you will need a safe place in your house, you will need to show us that you're fit to use the firearm. So it can be quite a protracted process. But because you make an application, I need to be really clear in this, does not mean that you're going to be granted a firearm certificate. And actually I'm very content with the system that's here. What makes me more nervous, as you alluded to at the start, is the number of unregistered firearms on there. And I suppose I might say that perhaps over the last 3 years, maybe we're being a little bit more proactive in actually taking firearms off the street. I would like to see that number much, much higher. But we only can do that working in partnership with communities. And I'll maybe talk a little bit later on about some thoughts as to how we can do that. So there's a very straightforward process if you want to hold a legally held firearm.
Absolutely, and I think it's a very well thought out process as well. Just so like I could boil it down in my head, and correct me if I'm wrong, of course. If I was to see that I had a proper reason to have a firearm, for example, I'm a business owner, and I have a business that is very uniquely challenged. For example, like I'm a bar that opens very, very late at night or something along those lines. I could make my argument via letter application to the commissioner and say, hey, I have a bar, we open up till very late hours of the night, robbers are a problem, loiterers are a problem. I might need to have a firearm. Or I'm a business that tends to have a lot of cash on hand. Things like this nature.
Those might be some reasons, but they're not necessarily
they're not,
it'll be granted. Because I might come back to you and say, when was the last time you were robbed? When's the last time you had a threat? When we look at the statistics, when was there a robbery in your area? So sometimes the fear doesn't actually match the reality, if you understand what I mean. The fear of crime doesn't actually necessarily match what's happening in that particular area or that particular individual's life.
Because we do have like a very weird cascading effect with gun possession. The more people who have guns, the more people want guns. The more I'm afraid of being, a victim of gun-related crime, the more I'm interested in having a gun myself as protection. And I can say as a man in Anguilla, I don't feel like we've reached that point, but as the numbers start to increase, I think it's becoming more and more of an issue that I've raised in the back of my head. Especially when you look at places like America and the arguments that are being made. We're not shielded to it. The common phrase, the only thing to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun type of situation.
I have one yourself. Okay.
I know you have mixed feelings. What does everybody else feel about that?
I'm sure we're going to get into that. We will have some further discussions on that particular.
For sure. Everyone, don't be shy to take a sip. You can drink. The bar is open all night. If you feel like you're on a little sweat, it's been hot, just take a sip.
I want to be slurring when it might turn.
Okay, so just to continue, I have, over the last few days, weeks, kind of searching on the internet, and came across a site, politics.co.uk, and the overview on the first page says, unlike in America, the debate between gun control and gun rights groups is far less visible or potent in the UK. It goes on that instead in the UK, there's a general public consensus against the ownership of handguns, and one which is enforced under strict legislation. The ownership of guns for sport is more readily acceptable. And these, again, are controlled by strict licensing regime, as you have mentioned. The article goes on to mention various legislation with respect to the UK's law, where the laws are derived from, in particular the 1968 Firearms Act. Now, we have seen you, Commissioner Clark, in and around the community, seen you at schools, at church. You know firsthand the situation in Anguilla with respect to crime, and in particular, gun crime. What do you see as your vision for fighting crime, and in particular gun crime in Anguilla?
Okay, that's a really good question, and let me put perhaps some of that into context. I believe there's probably only about 1 or 1.5% of this island who would be actively involved in that type of behaviour. So it's a very small number of individuals that I want to target. My vision for Anguilla while I'm here is to try and create a service that the people on this island feel confident in, that they feel safe with because of what we do, and that they want to engage with us to deal with this issue. Now, I understand, and I've been told in the last 7 weeks, some of the issues in the past around trust. And you're right, I've been to church a lot since I've arrived, and it's been a blessing. I will say that, it's been a blessing. And I was at a service, and I heard sort of 3 themes talked about, and it really struck me. The first one was about forgiveness. And I, as the Commissioner, need to ask the people in this island for forgiveness when we got it wrong. Actually, and be bold enough to stand up and say, we didn't get it right. And I apologise for that. Because my police force needs to reconcile with the people, and that was the second one, about reconciliation. As to how we work together to tackle the issues on this island that you want tackled, that you want me to deal with. And then the last one was that issue around accountability. And I'm very comfortable with that. I came from the most accountable police force probably in the world back home. So I have no issue with the public holding me to account as to what I've done here. But for me, that reconciliation is about building trust. And what I've tried to do is say 2 things. One, use me as a conduit. I love this island already. I really don't want to go home, truth be told. But I don't have relatives here. It's a very interfamilial island, and I get that. The one thing I can assure you is that with me, if you tell me something, I will treat it in the strictest confidence. And if I have a little time, I'll tell you a story that is reminiscent of when I arrived here, but it's about 20 years ago back home. But I've tried very much to push the online reporting portal. So it's the 911 / I know it says .gov.ai, but the domain isn't here. It's held in California. You don't even have to put your name on the online form. Just put the information down. It goes to California. They make sure that there's nothing on it that will identify the individual, and then they will send it to my intelligence unit. And the one thing I will say is, all the people in there are handpicked, have the utmost confidence about confidentiality.
That's important.
It
Right.
is.
That
It
is
is.
important. Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
So I want the people on the island to be assured there is a way out of this, and I can help. But I need some brave person to make the first step. And the one thing I will say to everyone here is, if you tell me something, I will do something about it.
I'll drink to that.
Drink to that.
All right. Thank you so much, Commissioner Clark. Now we've spoken about, the laws and the processes for obtaining firearms. Now there's a flip side, and more to the dock. Now, again, perusing through the internet, you came across an article or a website that says that the gun violence is an epidemic. And we know that there are serious impacts with respect to gun violence and the victims of gun violence. What are some of the impacts on the health sector in Anguilla and the services offered and resources? And, it's such a small community. What are the impacts? What happens?
I have to think about the question for a little bit. So, obviously, the largest impact in the short term would be for the victims and the families. And those persons, obviously, it's a tragedy, whether the person survives or not. So, you will have persons in the island that have had gun violence against them. They've survived, but now they may be confined to a wheelchair. We have, persons like that here. You have persons that may be severely debilitated otherwise, even though they're up and moving around. So in terms of costs outside of the emotional, physical, there's also financial. Those persons can't sometimes contribute the way they'd like to the community, their family. So they are there are effects that you don't usually think about. Then, of course, if the person passes away, you have loss of a breadwinner. You have children that grow up without fathers, which again might help to exacerbate the problem and continue to lead to more violence in the future. Persons say, I grew up without my father. It just continues.
Right.
So it's a sort of wide-reaching conversation that you can have. And of course, just one incident can stretch the health services quite a bit. I remember it was maybe 7 years ago where we had the shooting in Blowing Point. And I think maybe about 7 persons were actually struck.
Right.
And of course, we had persons come in. Me, myself, I'm not a surgeon, but it was pretty much all hands on deck.
Right.
We had Dr. Lowell Hughes. He came in, and he was given a hand just because,
Lovely.
it was so much going on.
Overwhelming.
It would be overwhelming for just the persons we had there. And as a community, I think everyone tried to come together in the medical community to try to help the way and assist.
I mean, with all of that, how you yourselves, how do you actually cope with such an occurrence?
Well, I think at the time you don't really think about it. You just do.
Just do it.
Just jump in and do what you have to do.
Yeah, but after the dust settles.
After the dust settles, well, one, you tend to worry about security.
Right.
Because there are things that happen in other countries that have not happened here as yet that
Right.
we would try to keep from happening. So We work along with the police officers to try to prevent any incidents in the hospital. Thankfully, that has not been an issue until now.
So, in most cases where you would have a situation like that, there's police present up until the person is discharged.
Not necessarily always until they're discharged. Definitely in the initial time, and when it initially happens, the whole hospital is actually locked down.
Okay.
You can only enter through certain points, and there is security at those points to see who it is that's approaching and so forth, and police officers are around. I don't know if it's always the case that there's enough staffing in terms of the police officers to be there for the entire time that the person is there, but they try as best they can to secure. But like I said, it can be draining emotionally to see what's happening.
Right.
You know, it's something that growing up I didn't have to deal with. I remember the first time I went away, I was in Jamaica, and you know, it was almost a joke to my Jamaican friend what we would have in the newspaper. And when I told him, gun violence, no, people getting shot, no, that doesn't happen. He said, well, what do you put in your newspaper then? I said, well, there are lots of things to put in the newspapers that have nothing to do with, you know, violence. So, but
Yeah, I know that all too well.
you know, but
too well.
that was the comment at the time. And at the time, I think Anguilla had to draw upon, I think it was a stabbing incident that had happened sometime years ago. I won't mention the specifics, but yes. So, you know, I told him we would have a murder once every 2 years or something. And they thought this was something that was amazing. And I thought, well, now that I look back, it is amazing. I wish we would return to those times.
Of course. I mean, especially now that you're looking at the statistics, and you know, I mean, fortunately, since 2020, 21, 22, the murders have been consistently at 2. We'd like to see that to go down to 0, but fortunately, there has been no increase in it. Unfortunately, attempted murders have been on the rise in 2026, 2021. One, I guess, because people were at home with COVID, you know, didn't have time to go out, and that jumped to 5 in 2022. Right. So yes, we quite understand the implications and the impact on the health services and the ability to be able to provide adequately for victims of gun violence, especially if the resources are not there. I want to turn your attention to the schools. I think, Dickwan, you had a question.
I did have a
regarding that.
question for 2 individuals. It'll be Jadu and Mr. Clark. I'll start with Jadu. Just based on being around the school and whatnot, what measures of security you've seen being implemented, and in your own way, what do you think can be implemented to increase the security as it relates to violence in general that goes around?
Well, in terms of the recent incident that would have happened at the school, you know, the kids said some guys passed by on a bike and they seemed to have had a gun. I don't know how true that was, but the kids were a bit shaken up about that. And since then, since they do the whole press release and all that stuff, more security persons are there. Yeah, so they increase the number of security guards. Some of them are more in Campus B area. You see a few outside. You see police as well, going back and forth between Campus A and Campus B. Sometimes they walk around a bit just to show that, hey, we are here. You know what I mean? Just to make the kids then feel a bit more at ease. So I do like what they've done there. In terms of the whole security, Campus B would be the easiest to secure because Campus B is just a box structure. So you have your cameras, you have the security guards, but you also have to remember now kids walk between Campus B and Campus A.
So in that gap,
it becomes a bit difficult in terms of that. But we are moving to the new school, so we do see that not being an issue.
Centralized.
Yes, so it's not going to be an issue anymore. The kids are going to be one area. Security guards could easily maintain them, look after them, cameras. So right now, and school's closing up as well. So right now I think they handle it well introducing more security guards, the police is coming by, cameras. I think that's been handled well. And with the new school, I think it's going to lessen as well the amount of incidents we might be seeing. Yes?
That's very, very good.
So just one more question I have. Since
But
the
Go on,
recent...
just before you go on there, I just want to touch something. Just because both myself, Jadu, and Daquan, we're all around the same age, we all attended school the same time, being at Lake Hodge. I keep having like this discussion in my head. In the times where we were in school, was the school a safer place than it is now?
That's a good
I
question.
try to think. I don't remember thinking about guns, some of these concerns that young persons are having. I'm sure we had our things. But
Yeah, I feel the fellas used to settle things with their fists more. Yeah. A lot of the younger ones nowadays, they seem to want to use tools. Yeah, not necessarily guns, but noise and
I think
objects.
social media has a
That's a big thing as well.
big part.
Like one time I heard the kids have beef from first farm to fifth farm over one incident, on Grand Theft Auto. So these kids were fighting, because they had an incident on Grand Theft Auto.
That's a video game.
Yeah, a video game. But they brought it to real life.
brought in real life, and it happens more and more often. And it actually leads quite nicely into another question. Like, of course, young persons, they're being influenced from media, TV, music. Now, of course, we have Daquan Reed here. And apart from being an excellent talk show host, an amazing backup, you're also a member of one of the more popular bands here in Anguilla. And just
That's
as
true.
a member of one of the more popular bands, what sort of role do you think entertainers pose in addressing violence?
Okay.
As
So-
such a big, influencer, especially amongst younger kids.
That's true. Just in general, being in the music industry, entertainers, I could say right now, just from observing, mostly what any entertainer would want to do is to get a crowd, right? So your content tends to be right now. This is a trend, generally, what I've observed. The trend for most entertainers, mostly like in the US and you can say the different countries that have a more influence on the general populace, they speak more towards gangbanging and those different things, shooting, clubbing, stuff that may incite violence. Really and truly, in some cases, the artist may be trying to convey something that may be just to paint the picture of their reality. But sometimes it's taken as, okay, cool. He's singing this, I like the tune, I like the beat. I'm going to glorify what's happening, what he's singing about, but not really taking the hidden message. So sometimes, some messages are direct, go ahead, do this is a life to live, which is a negative lifestyle. But some may convey, just to illustrate what they're going through, the struggle, and also what the come up is after they get out of it. But between the artist and the message, it gets lost and mumbled. And some artists are just straight, just negative.
But even when they hear the message too, it's still like, yo, those guys sound cool. I want to live a life like that. When we talk about like Tupac, you know what I mean? We know what Tupac was talking about, but he made being a part of the ghetto
Glorified.
seem interesting. And then them other songs, most of them just nonsense.
Yeah.
Like when you listen to them, you tend to feel angry, like you tend to feel hype.
But music has really taken a shift over the years. I mean, back in the day, music was about love.
Yeah.
About, getting with
Good
your girl.
vibes, yeah.
And then all of that changed, So, there has been a shift. And guys, we've been speaking a lot about the challenges and the problems that we've been having regarding guns.
But
So-
Andrew, just before we move on from that, I just want to touch. It's not on top of our prepared questions for tonight. I'm sorry. I like to go off script.
Listen, it's just because conversation, right?
I was having the discussion, and I think I definitely remember, and I hope some other persons remember as well, specifically where it comes to influence from media in terms of violence. I will say, domestically, our music is much more about moving your waist
Yeah,
than it is
right.
of violence, and thank goodness
If
for
your
that.
name end with a E.
Yeah, things like this.
That's not good, though.
But we, of course, we live in an age where there's the internet, there's YouTube, you can
Everything's,
see anything.
just-
We're much more of a globalized society than we've ever been before, and because of that, with the good, we also get some of the bad, which includes some of this harder entertainment
a lot of the bad, right?
that we have to say is popular.
And I think for young people today, I'm guessing I'm probably the oldest here. But when I would have been a teenager, there weren't any mobile phones. There wasn't the internet. So if I fell out with someone at school, I didn't see them until the next day.
Yeah.
They couldn't get to me in my bedroom. They couldn't bully me in my room. They couldn't send me messages. I think it's so much more difficult for young people today to get away
Absolutely.
from some of the really negative influences.
Absolutely.
Really, really difficult. And then the peer pressure piece of that FOMO, of fear of missing out, is massive. Absolutely huge.
Now, to that end, I remember quite controversially, back in our age of growing up, we used to have basically your main means of entertainment was TV. And at that time, we had a television channel which was BET. BET used to have wide array of programming, but it also included a little bit more of the harder hitting things like rap and all these sort of things. And there was actually a move to have that removed from channels. Sort of try, I don't know exactly who and where it pushed, but it ended up being that they removed the BET. Is that something that we might need to look at in today's context, where we as a society start to place some sort of or levels of censorship on some of the materials that young people have access to?
That's a
But
very
it's
good
only-
point,
it's
Jimmy.
only
Just
internet.
before Commissioner Clark, and that's an excellent way. I wanted to introduce this because I want to get Kasem's view on this. So I started to say we've been speaking a lot about the challenges. Now, what as we as a community and as a leader in the church, what can we do to be able to reduce gun violence?
I think we got to get back to the basics and back to fundamental values and principles. I think that the church is strategically placed to supply that to the community if the community wants it. But the reality is that the church isn't supposed to be an organization that forces our beliefs on anybody. And I know that we're at a period now where there's a lot of people that have their issues with the church. Even the young people, anytime I introduce myself as a pastor, you could see.
It's
disdain.
Yes, that gotta be like me when I tell the kids I gotta teach them some maths. Yeah, face is like
Right. And I think that we really need to go back to. I mean, when I was growing up, even if the parents didn't come to church, they would send the children to Sunday school, or they would send their children to church, and the children would learn the basic principles when it comes to what it means to how to deal with conflicts, forbearance, how to control yourself, and how to deal with different issues that you would see in the different stories that they would learn in Sunday school, and how those persons dealt with those issues. But without that, and with the influence of social media, as you said, even with the games like Jadu just mentioned, most of the most popular games have some sort of shooting and war and firearms in them. And this is what our young children are watching, and they think it's real.
Yeah, but then
Absolutely.
it goes back to
It goes
Cuba's
back
point.
to, in fact, Grand Theft Auto is such a good point because Grand Theft Auto is one of those games that, in being controversial, is banned in a number of countries. A number of countries. I can't tell you what the success rate or the influence of that has been, but
For me, it's that desensitization.
desensitization.
Of-
Yes.
I used to be head of traffic back home. And we would have done stuff with young drivers. So I adopt they know better than I, but 17 to 24 year olds are 4 times more likely to kill someone on the road, particularly young men,
Wow.
than any other age group. And this, if we had time, I listened to the most fascinating guy in London one time. His name was Dag Finn. He was a Norwegian brain scientist, and he went through brain maturation. And he did it in such a non-medical way. It was totally enlightening from the point of view of your brain matures from back to front. And if I said to everyone here, if you thought back to when you were a teenager, did you ever do anything really, really stupid? Rhetorical question, just saying, it's a rhetorical question.
Nah, I'm an angel.
With the broken hill.
I always say I talked about empathy earlier on. I always say to the cops that came to work for me as new police officers, and I've said it here. So I always ask them 2 questions. The first one was the one I've just asked. And the second one was, if you'd have got caught, would you be in the police now? Or would you be in the job you're in?
That's the one. That's the one.
And there's a little bit of, there but by the grace of God, go someone else. And actually, when you're dealing with that person in crisis, maybe they just weren't as lucky as me, or you, or someone else. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person. It just means they made a bad choice, and they don't know how to get out of it. So that's why I talk about empathy, of sometimes you've got to understand, and be in that person's shoes to understand, how am I going to help that individual? And I've gone slightly off topic. I guess slightly.
That's why we're this conversation.
It's conversation. Yes.
But for me, that's it's so important. And we talked about the desensitization of if it's Halo or Modern Warfare or whatever it happens to be. You shoot somebody on the screen, or you get shot. You hit the reset button, and you're good to go. That's not real life.
No.
And the doc knows that.
No reset.
You get shot in the head, there is no reset button.
No.
There's no armor pack.
There's
you
no-
can
no.
go and get. There's no health juice.
And that little bit of, I do think for some kids, it's a game. Can I be really controversial?
Disconnect between reality.
So it speaks. It's right. I was going to say it speaks to
illusion.
What were you gonna say, Commissioner?
the reality versus what they say. I think, yeah.
So I've said it a few times, and I'll say it here. That there are adults, probably men, in our society, who are trying to bring young people, and probably young men, to their lifestyle. I believe it is genderless.
Absolutely. 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 Just
Do you know how I look at them?
How?
Child abusers.
I can see that. I can absolutely see that.
Child abusers. They're grooming
Yes.
young, vulnerable, normally men, young men, who have no experience of life, feeding them a pipe dream of gangsters, gangs, guns, whatever. You see when that young person is no longer of any use, they're just going to cast them aside, they'll ruin them, and they'll move on. They're child abusers. That's what those people are. They are child abusers.
But you see now with that too, for us, if they could be doing it, why can't we be doing it as well?
Right,
Why
so-
can't
so
we be
what's the
mentors?
outcome?
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because even
We
me
need
as
to
a
nip it in
teacher,
the bud.
me as a teacher, I deal with some kids that bosses might say are the bad ones, right? But when you talk to these guys aren't no bad kids. Yeah, these guys, I don't know why they're
Hard
choosing to do those type of things, but they just
So,
get
but
involved in it.
the question I have is, how can we, as a community, schools, churches, wider community, identify these individuals?
Well, I mean, they go into school, yeah? They go into school, the teachers are dealing with them. They realizing that maybe while in class, this
No,
person's acting
are the teachers really doing what they're supposed to do?
Well, that's a wee bit unfair because
That's not your
It's a question. Are they doing what they're supposed to do?
not
Identify.
resources. Do we have the resources to do what we're supposed to do too? So now, if I see a child misbehave in the back of the class, right, I go and I try to talk to that child. I try to, figure what's going on. What happens to the rest of the class? What do I do? Take it up to the principal. Let the principal deal with it. Yeah, but then it comes down to that moment. They can get a little talking. They might get punished. Maybe the parents might come in, but what are we doing after that? Why are the kids not engaged?
But there's a little bit of, I've been really impressed by this, the Troubled Families program. Actually, where you're trying to find 5% that really need help. Maybe because they don't have a father figure or whatever it happens to be in that family. So how do we support that family?
Can now
Really
become
impressed by Hassan.
easy for those guys to groom them because they don't have the family. They want a family. They want somebody to show like love or a place of belonging.
So-
we got him for a few hours a day. I could talk to him and tell him, oh, don't do this, don't do that. It don't make sense. Explain that. But then them gone for the rest of the day. How much ever hours there is other people.
So I would like to be the devil's advocate on this.
Yeah, before you do that, I think Casey wanted to make a...
No, I was getting the case.
Okay,
So that's why I said devil's advocate.
Gotcha.
So, if I remember vaguely, when I was going to church, there used to be a program where pastors and people within the church used to foster some kids, take them for a bit, and troubled kids that were identified within the community, and hold them, have them live by them for a bit, and really, talk to them, groom them, understand the situation. Are the churches still doing that? And within your influence as a spiritual leader, would you be able to propose this to the council to start back this program? Because I think to identify the kids that are troubled and are being basically abused by child abusers, molesters even, if you want to go that far.
Molesters of the
Because
mind.
it's gross. You know what I'm saying? Their feet, as Mr. Clark says, they're feeding them a pipe dream that, hey, you do this, you get this, because they've seen everything on TV. You go do this for me, you get this money, and you could flash it off if you don't know any better. So, is this happening? And if it's not, we get this one?
Yes, the churches do have mentorship programs. I think that it could be done on a larger scale in terms of, and it is something that I definitely could recommend to my brethren. What I would say though is that a lot of the children that are in these situations have a family dynamic where probably even their persons closest to them are the ones that are feeding into the behavior, right? So it presents a unique challenge to the church to try to come in unless you can take the child out of that environment. You're probably fighting a really uphill battle with that individual. But I do know that most assemblies, once there's families in the church that they have challenges, they provide all of the support that they can. But the reality at the end of the day is that I think that we need to, beyond the church as a whole community, get back to the way we used to do it in the old time days, where it was the village that raised a child. I think that a lot of times we pass children on the road, they might be doing something minor, and we might just ignore it, keep going about our business, in old time days, I hear the stories about how before you reach home, your mother, your father don't know about it already.
You know, and how did that happen? They didn't have much telephones in those days. But they knew.
Exactly.
They found out.
But I think that we have to. It requires a whole community effort. I think as a community, as I said from the beginning, we got to decide, what we gonna stand for. If we're gonna say that we're dealing with love, if we're saying that we're going to have a mutual respect among brethren, in spite, of what your religious beliefs might be. What are our values, and then what our young people seeing from us as adults, in terms of looking at us as role models, because young people don't necessarily need us to be in their lives to impact their lives. Because you look at it right now, they're impacted by social media, they're impacted by the superstars that they've never met in their life. But even us in our community, who they can see, what example are we setting for young people? And I think that we have to challenge ourselves, because we have been desensitized to a lot of things from the highest level going all the way down in terms of behavior. And we need to really talk about, how we deal with conflict.
Sometimes the laws are not helping either.
Eh?
The laws are not helping either. Sometimes the legislation that is being passed
yes.
are not helping. But I want to move off topic just a little bit. We've spoken about gun violence, the effects on the community and the families. And I want to direct this specifically at Dr. Richardson. Tell us the science of when a bullet hits an individual. The trauma, what happens? Because I think, if we hear the gory details, people might say, oh shucks, I don't want to get involved in that.
At this point, you're going
velocity.
Can we to the IT guys? Can we get an edit with the actual image? Is that possible?
I feel like I just got hit by one myself.
Have a drink. Oh.
I'm here thinking, I think you have the wrong type of doctor. You need some sort of forensics or ballistics type of PhD specialist. I don't know if the commissioner could answer this better than me.
I'm not a doctor, but I saw the consequences. I've had to deal with the consequences over many years. And there's a high velocity round and there's a low velocity. So 9mm tends to be the round that I see used here. It only takes one to finish the job. Okay. But actually the shock of that entering your body, to punch a hole in your skin, to rip your muscle apart. If it hits a bone, as the doctor knows, where's it going to deflect to? Is it going into your lungs? Is it coming out your back? Is it coming out at all? And you very aptly talked earlier on about the massive trauma that one round can have. And you then move on to a more high velocity round, which, if it hits you on the shoulder, is going to, you might have a small entry wound. Got to turn people over to find holes as big as my hand in your back.
From what size?
From 5.56, 7.62. And it'll just, and actually, 5.56 round traveling at 1,200 feet a second, maybe more. And it's going to go straight through you, and it might go through you. It might stop if it hits the ground.
So the exit wound is normally...
The exit wound is normally very, very traumatic, because the round will mushroom, so it goes from a sharp point to flat plate, and it just pushes everything. Pushes everything. But the shock wave in itself, with a really high velocity rounds enough to kill you, going through your body, is just the shock on your body.
That would be like when a plane goes faster than the sound, the
Yeah, yeah.
speed of sound.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
Bringing behind it,
I
it'll
mean,
shock
high
you.
velocity is going faster than the speed of sound.
So
It's going to hit you before you hear it.
Yeah, because they go past 340.
So just for everyone who's listening, just for educational purposes, in the event that I or anyone is hit by a stray bullet, what should I do?
First thing is call 911.
Yeah.
And if I can't,
Okay.
to preserve, stop the bleeding, what should I do? What should I do?
Well, maybe-
What should I do and what should I not
Yeah,
do?
Doc, I think you could
Maybe the doc comes in at this
So,
point.
the first thing, call 911. If you can't do that, I can only imagine if you can find a site of bleeding, try to apply pressure. That's just general principle. Anything else, I don't know that you can do yourself, because you need to go in. Surgeon will find where you're bleeding from, try to stop bleeding. Sometimes you can retrieve the bullet. Sometimes you have to leave it where it is. Some people sometimes walk around with fragments, not just a bullet, fragments, because it
Because
breaks
the main
apart.
reason why I asked that is because you don't have to be a part of a gang violence or conflict to be hit by a bullet, you know? So, which will lead to my next question for you, the doctor. In terms of what, I'm not sure if therapy, but if you would know, in terms of people who have committed gun crimes and people who are victims of it, is there therapy provided to them in terms of those who committed and those who are victims?
I'm not actually aware of any therapy that's being provided. No, therapy is available. It would always be obviously at the request or the desire of the person. In terms of persons that have, the perpetrators that have been caught, I don't know that we have any sort of program that would speak to those persons. But definitely the victims, we can have persons coming from church, leaders from church, psychologists, psychiatrists. There isn't any fixed response as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
Those services are there, but it's not something that is automatic as far as I know.
Okay.
So persons in hospital, if they seem particularly troubled, and this is tricky because sometimes persons are troubled and you're not aware. They've gone through something traumatic. They may be in shock still. They may be quietly really suffering. So sometimes you might refer to the psychiatrist, but that's not something that is rote. It's not something that automatically happens, and maybe it's something we should look into.
We should.
Not just for the persons in hospital, but persons
Who are dealing
who are dealing with this on the
directly
outside.
or indirectly.
Right.
Because I know there are a lot of people who are still going through mental issues from a loss of their child, that have been gun violence, and some feel like, you know, they're not being attended to, whether it may be psychology from the community or from the police standpoint. They feel like they're not being attended to, the crime is unsolved. And going into that as a segue to you, Mr. Clark, how are we unsolved cases? How are we dealing with those parents who may be affected from the loss of their child? Have you gone over those case files to see what we can do? Are you reaching out to the parents? Are you providing empathy? And what is the officers, what are the officers doing when they are going out, reaching out to these people that are affected?
So there's, I guess, a piece for me of, I'm back to, I'm only here 7 weeks.
That's okay.
So I haven't done
That's okay.
all of the
We're adding to your
the
to-do
cold
list.
case reviews, but it is something that I would expect to do and go back and say, so where are we with this case? Have we exhausted all the lines of inquiry? Have I used all the resources, if it's reaching back to the NCA in England or some of the assistance I can get through the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, to have someone come out with a senior detective with a fresh eye to say, have we done everything that we can? So that is normal to do that type of thing. For me, in anything like that, we appoint a family liaison officer to try and have that bridge between the investigation and the family so that they know what's going on. So if they have questions they can ask, and we can try and ease the mental strain that's on them by doing that. And I'm back to sometimes it doesn't always work the way that you hope, because if you've lost someone, it's just the most horrendous experience. And sometimes you want answers that I'm not able to give because I don't know. I don't know if I've lost the mic there or not. But it can be really hard. It can. And sometimes you see that you lose a family because you can't answer questions because you don't have the answers that they want. So it is really difficult. And as the doc said, a gun-related violence or a murder, certainly where I came from back home, we always talked about one incident touching 100 people. Mm-hmm. Whether that was the first responders, the doctors, the pastor, the teachers, aunties, uncles, grannies, other kids. So one incident has a massive, massive ripple effect within the community.
I feel as though with the inflicting crime, everyone has inside the back of their head, when is it going to be something that affects me? Now, I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody do, I feel as I would say regular person who doesn't, get involved in anything in terms of illicit activity, relatively a homebody. I work in IT.
You could do a lot of illicit activities.
Usually not with guns.
Mr. Dark Web.
But I think more and more, and the statistics are there to show it, more and more we are everyday, regular, run-of-the-mill persons are coming or being directly infected by gun violence. It's been in robbery. Mm-hmm. Typically, that's where you can expect to see something along those lines go through. In 2020, there's been 3 robberies which involved a gun. And we're already in 2022, and that number has jumped all the way to 9. Mm-hmm. It's becoming a more an alarming thing that more persons are starting to think in the back of their head. People are starting to rob with firearms. No.
But I need to come back and say, actually, it's still quite rare.
It's very rare.
Which is good.
Yeah,
but what I talk about is low frequency, but high impact.
That's
and
true.
that's exactly what this is.
Absolutely.
Because it just spreads that fear of people talk. And I say to I've always said to the cops, think of a time when you've had a bad experience, a bad meal, bad flight, bad something. How many people did you tell?
Absolutely.
And stats will say you'll tell at least 20 people. I could tell you a story about Air France, and I've told this to hundreds and hundreds of people because of a bad experience. But if you have a good experience, how many times do you actually say, I had a good experience? Statistics would say 5. So every time we in the police get it wrong, somebody in my job gets it wrong, other people have to work 4 times as hard
That's right.
just to stand still.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's the like of the robbery piece that has that massive
now
ripple effect.
specifically with robbery, especially us having gone through Hurricane Irma, then rightly after the cups of Hurricane Irma, the COVID pandemic, it's been no secret that finances throughout the island, are not been the best.
Okay.
Do we feel as though Anguilla's current financial climate has some level to do with the increase in gun violence?
I'm only here 7 weeks, so I can't.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's for you.
What do you think,
That's for
Jason?
you, that's
What do you
for
think?
But why do you think, Jason? I'd like to hear everybody's thought,
You know,
because we
yeah.
do want to see if we can at some point, not to point the finger, but see if we can find where some of the symptoms of this gun violence comes from.
Underlying factors. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we do have more challenging financial times right now, and it could be leading to. I couldn't definitively say that is the reason. The unfortunate thing for me though is I would be trying to process it in my head, and is it that persons have reached to the place where they're so financially depraved that they think that their only recourse is to go to a business establishment and take what somebody else has worked hard for by force, right? And for me, when I try to process that, it comes back now to like that person's values and why you think that's the best course of action that you can take. And I mean, I've seen since Irma and COVID, I've seen a lot of people popping up selling food. I wonder if so much people that eat so much food in Anguilla. I've seen a lot of people trying to do. I mean, we have some resourceful people in Anguilla that we can look at other avenues of making money. Unfortunately, there's only so much an individual can do. I think the government of the day has to do its part in creating an economic environment for its people as well. But for me, in terms of the economic situation causing people to rob, I would say it's a small minority, as the commissioner said, and then I would add question. It goes back to the values of those individuals. Even to me, when I process it, somebody intentionally, maliciously shooting somebody, what frame of mind you have to be in?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that anybody who's going around robbing ain't really of the highest moral structure. It's very easy to make the adjustment to say, I want something, you have what I want. I'm going to try and take it by force, even if it's petty things. I think it's, at least in my mind, it's a pretty fair correlation to make between financial state of a country and the increase in robbery.
No,
I think that's pretty standard across the
no.
board.
Well, okay, so
The
I feel a bit mixed about that because while the financial state of a country might encourage some persons to try to find illegal ways, it's not, I think, the vast majority of people that will do that. Right, so some persons may get so desperate that they use that avenue, but I think the greater number of persons that go to rob, and I have no statistics on this, this is just my gut feeling,
of course.
is that it's just someone that wants something that they see someone else has, and they can't afford it at that time. They don't have the means, or maybe don't wish to work to that end to get that thing. So when you see persons robbing, are they robbing to get money to buy food? Are they robbing to get money to buy material things that they wish they had? So now that would have to be something that persons that look at persons that actually were captured,
Very
and you can seek motivations that way. I can't necessarily say what anyone's motivations are,
Yeah, that's very interesting.
but as you pointed out, you have persons selling food, you have persons finding other avenues, and they might find some illegal ways that are non-violent. Maybe they may try to plant some plants
Tell me what.
I'm gonna jump in here and be devil's
Well, also illegal. Instance.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump in and be devil's advocate because when we look at firearm related matters, possession of firearm, having one, 16. The next highest statistic in 2022 is robbery. Hence the question that Gibber is asking. It seems as if there, and might be low, might be high, but there is a correlation between the economic status, country, individuals, mainly, who would want to perpetrate robbery.
But I see where the doctor's coming from.
No, obviously,
Yeah,
you see where the doctor's coming
And
from.
I must say, I had not thought about that. I don't think, and this is just my perspective, I don't think people are stealing for food at this point in time.
No.
I think people are stealing
Those are
Gucci chains.
They're saying,
And it could
money.
be just one or two people who are doing the
Absolutely.
majority of this.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely.
So
That's the
it's
other-
not 16 different people.
It's not, you're not seeing that
Certainly.
there. Yeah.
It could be just a very small number.
Yeah. And while it is that the incidence is still pretty low, maybe I'm just unlucky. I was at Blanchard's when there was an attempted robbery. Luckily the security was there. It's Del Prado was there, Mr. Aragon. And luckily he was outside and he came in and surprised them and they took off. And then the more recent incident was actually in Chinese grocery in George Hill. It's right behind where the Rote Hut is now.
Right.
I was actually at the register paying when the person came in with the gun, and I just backed away. I don't feel safe.
You're well trained.
So I'm never going to a restaurant or shopping with you.
And there's a question, Dickman, just before, for the commissioner. If there's a robbery and you are present,
Yep.
what should you do?
If the commissioner's present, anybody.
No,
So if an
specifically the
individual-
commissioner, because there's a
So my view always is money can be replaced. Human life can never be replaced. So, and I have way back in the 80s, I used to work for a company in Northern Ireland that collected money, cash, and there was an armed robbery when we were delivering cash to a bank. But that was the company view of somebody's coming to you with a gun, just give them the money. Just give them the money. We can replace the money.
Sure.
We can't replace you. So my own personal view is you will always have someone who wants to be a have-a-go hero, and that's very commendable. But there's a risk with that. And I agree with the doctor, back away.
Yeah. My wallet was right in my hand. If you want it, here it is.
So just on that, shameless plug a lot. What I would just say to people, in general in society, even shopkeepers, I would say to, let's all try to. We're in 2023. Let's update the POS machines. The more swiping you do, the less chances of you actually getting robbed. So as much as we would like to run from certain quote unquote fees, the chance of you getting robbed are high.
Low.
So low.
There are 52 weeks in a year. There were 16.
Well, as we are currently going through economic depression and
Who tell you that?
Who tell you that?
statistics, don't worry about it. Don't ask me where giving statistics wrong. But it's better for businesses to just have point of sale machines and customers to use cards, because you're gonna get robbed. You may not be robbed at gunpoint. It could be someone, you left your car open, someone took up your wallet and they gave it back to you, but they took your cash out. So gone on the days where you should feel like, yeah, I got a bunch of money in my pocket, I got a wad of cash. You're just putting yourself to be a target of robbery. I got big jewelry on. You're just a target. You're just making yourself a target. So just try your best to live modestly.
keep the money on the bank. It don't have to be a big wad in your cash. Because also I would say the commissioner would think someone who has a big wad of cash walking around the place is
Of interest to me.
person of interest. So don't put yourself on that radar. You can swipe your card, you can write a check.
My thing with the card, they probably then we off topic here.
Nah, and
The thing with
shameless
the card,
plug.
you're saying that persons who have the card machines have to pay to have those card machines, right?
Yes.
A monthly or yearly fee.
Yes.
So now do those persons put that extra charge on the food in the shop?
Yeah,
So now regardless of the way off card. That's out there on my mind.
Give them the short answer.
He opened up that can.
The short answer is no.
No, the shop.
So it's not.
You best believe. still
There, you can go on the merchant.
people
You can
in-
go online on Visa's website. There's a merchant agreement there. You could read through that yourself, and it would tell you what the shopkeepers can and cannot do. Specifically, there are certain rules for the U.S. and there are certain rules for countries outside of the U.S. So we would fall under outside of the U.S. So you can educate yourself by reading a merchant agreement, so you know your rights as a customer. AKA also again shameless plug, NCBA here to stay.
Well, just to put us a little bit back on topic, I just had like an open-ended question. I would love to hear what our panelists have to think about it. Now, of course, we do have the numbers, and our numbers are not zero. Possession of firearms 16, discharging of firearms 5, shots fired 3, and the list goes on. Although, again, not zero, these are also not high numbers for a population of 16,000. These aren't ridiculous numbers. With these numbers, do you feel safe in Anguilla as a man in Anguilla?
Generally, I don't feel as safe as I did, say, 20 years ago. Just because I know what is happening, what is out there. Maybe also shaded by the 2 incidents I mentioned. So I know they're there. In each case, the firearm wasn't discharged, except for the security.
Okay.
But the robbers didn't discharge the weapons. So again, while the possession is high, thankfully there was no discharge of the weapon. When I was growing up, I used to have a habit of walking from Little Harbor around to Long Salt Pond area by myself on the rocks. Would I do that now? Probably not.
No?
Just because there's some part of me that's worried that I will run into someone doing something that wouldn't be pleased to meet me doing what they're doing. And, it might not end well for me. So that's not to say I don't venture about the island, but I do it with a bit more trepidation than I would have some 20 years ago, for example. So I do feel, some bit of discomfort when driving through dark areas, especially if it's not very populous at the time.
You got a village in particular?
Don't answer that question.
No, well, it's not even. I mean, right there in the valley, when you're going past Raymond Gishard, if there are no activities there, it looks pretty dark there. And on the walls by the volleyball court, I saw some graffiti that looks like pretty recent tagging. At least I didn't remember seeing it, say, 6 weeks ago, unless I just wasn't paying attention. So, you drive there at night and you think, is this the best decision, or should I go on the main road? So these are things that I know I never used to think about as much. I know some of the female persons at the hospital would tend to not drive there at night. They would tend to go to the main road and go along the road to the stoplight, to the airport road. So, and I do tell people, visitors, friends that visit, random visitors, yes, we're a relatively safe place, but don't take chances that you wouldn't take other places. Use common sense in doing what you do. Right? So, yes, we feel relatively safe, but when things happen, there's that feel of
course. What about you, John?
might I just have been around place at the wrong time?
Yeah. How you feel about the job?
I think, in a sense, it's similar to the doctor. When I go anywhere, there is a peace in my mind, a small place for saying something could happen here. What if something did happen? But to say I feel unsafe to walk anywhere or go anywhere in Anguilla, not really. Yeah, not particularly. But there is a piece of my mind saying that something can happen.
Wary.
Yeah, it's like going in the ocean. Something can happen. I go spear fishing. Anything could happen. A shark could come back. Could come. Yeah, is there a possibility?
But we need to put out the reality of the situation. There are some individuals who have not left Island Harbor in years. There are some individuals that haven't seen the valley in years. There's some individuals.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
a large
So
degree on them.
I think we need to. I think that we need to, as a community, find a way to get over. I'm not too sure what's happening. I don't know what the driving line is. Do you guys think it's retaliation? This is a general question.
Yeah, but I mean, if you in
For what?
school and you got you and your friends from the valley come fight me guy from the west, yeah. I mean, if I ever see another guy from the valley, my head might be, oh, I want to fight him. If I was a part of something,
And you don't even know that guy.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. You know what I mean? But that's what we used to go through when we was going to school. You know what I mean? Depending on which part you sit on in the school. You remember they had the West Block, East Block, Valley Block. Depending on who you associate yourself with, you could end up in a fight.
So you would say, based on that well, from our knowledge in general, all these things stem within the educational area.
Well, no, it's not that. But remember the educational areas where all of us gather. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just
everybody
to
knows. Yeah, that.
But just so we don't go off topic, how do you feel in terms of your safety in general in Anguilla?
I feel pretty safe, but the reality of the matter is that I really don't
get involved in anything, so there's no
venture out
reason for
anywhere.
a target.
And even with the topic of persons not being able to leave the valley or Island Harbor, you know, the Bible says you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Yeah.
So the type of lifestyle you
Type of
choose,
lifestyle.
you gotta know that
That's what it is.
you have to live that way as a result of
I
that.
even remember a story of this gentleman back in his school days. He used to be a part of a little gang, you know, fighting what's not. But when he left school, he became a Christian. You know, he started going to church, and he took himself. He went around the island and basically apologized. And basically tried to, you know, reconcile with these guys that are also part of these gangs. And I'm like, hey, we had our issues back then. I don't have nothing against you now. You know what I mean? That is a scary thing to do, but he took it upon himself to.
You talked about what could men do on the island to make a difference.
Accountability.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely.
So
What role models do we have in this island who can say, I was there, I made that mistake, it was the wrong path. Don't make the same mistake. How can I or we find models like that who actually kids can relate to, young men?
Absolutely.
You know, I'm the commissioner of police. You know, I'm coming 59 years old. So you're supposed to go, really? But you didn't. So that little bit of, you know, I have a certain degree of influence, but actually the reach back that someone that you've just talked about as an agent for change is huge.
Absolutely.
That's right. That's right.
And it spreads from those actions. It's the same way our act of violence impacts a significant amount of persons. Someone taking that level of and going forward with that level of empathy, all of a sudden that same person that you apologize, when I apologize to you, you naturally inclined to think to yourself, maybe I need to apologize as well.
I feel based on what Jadu just said, a peacemaker, just doing that. I think people who are in this whole gang violence lifestyle, they feel like there's no exit strategy outside of death.
Yeah.
So
it depends on how far you go too.
Of course, but
based on what you just said, that was that guy's exit strategy, looking for repentance and forgiveness. That was his exit strategy. So what we as a society need to even formulate is to assist these people who are in the shadows, to let them know you don't need to be 6 feet under to get out of this lifestyle. You don't need to listen to that person who's grooming you to feel if you do this, you in this forever. You gonna die by this because you did this. Because it's a mental thought, just thinking, I committed this crime. I didn't even know what I did, but I did it. And someone's telling me, look, you gotta stay low, you gotta do this, you gotta let something we know we gonna take care of you. It's grooming. So we need to let them know or find a way to let them know there's an exit strategy. You don't have to continue this. There's a way for you to live peacefully. There's a way for you to be a kid. Because right now the main focus is on the children. If we can impact the children, we can stop a generation of violence. Because everything right now is centered and focused on the children.
And I'm really grateful to the high school because I have one of the community cops in there, and I was there like yesterday morning. And we run a DARE program, but it's all about choices and how we can help kids make the right choice. So 170 something kids went through that program, so it's an opportunity to try and change 170 lives.
Do they still bring in persons from the prisons to speak? I remember we were going to school, some persons from the prisons came in. You know what I mean? They talked about their lives and their regrets. Do they still do that? I haven't been to one.
I haven't been through the whole program, but the program is pretty much around getting the kids to understand risky situations, risky behaviors, and then trying to give them that coping mechanism of how do I make the right choice. How to make the right choice.
You know, in America, they got this like the documentary series where kids who commit certain felonies, certain crimes, they actually have to go to prisons and spend time with these like serious criminals. You know what I mean? I've always thought about, is that something we can do? You know what I mean? To really scare these persons that are going on that path, to show them that, hey, this is not where I want to be.
That's true. I think it's called Scared Straight.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, hopefully we can get to that. Gentlemen, I would just like to say thank you for coming out.
What? We're done already? Second drink.
We're gonna get to that after the show. Don't worry. Okay. But thank you again, guys, for coming to our first episode of Cocktales, where
the conversations are
delicious and refreshing. We're gonna get that right. Don't worry about that. So thank you again to the national public for tuning in, and we have something nice next week for episode 2. So keep locked in. Follow us on Facebook on the Gender Affairs Unit. We should be on Instagram, of course. You follow Gender Affairs Unit. Of course, we'd like to thank our sponsors yet again, Marijuana, Young Hustlers, and also Pink Mako for allowing us to come up with episode 1. So see you again and have a wonderful night.
And of course, thank you to Mal Johanna and Swelly Bar.
All right, guys.
Yes, guys.
They got a kid on another one. Yeah. You're tuning now, you're listening to Cocktales Podcast, y'all. Cocktales, where the conversations are fresh.
Oh no, not today. Yo, Dre.